Fiancé refuses to introduce me to his daughter, claiming she's toxic, but now she shows up at our Let Me Set the Stage. I am 29 and female, have been with my fiancé James, 34, male for 2 years, and up until last weekend, I thought he was the love of my life. James is charming, thoughtful, and has always seemed like the perfect partner. He swept me off my feet early in our relationship, and when he proposed 6 months ago, I was over the moon. But there was always one shadow hanging over our relationship: James's past marriage and his estranged relationship with his daughter Leah, 17, female. From the very beginning, James made it clear that he didn't want to talk too much about it. He told me that his ex-wife had cheated on him years ago, breaking his heart and destroying his trust. According to him, the betrayal was so severe that even his own daughter had turned against him, choosing to side with her mother and her affair partner during the divorce. She's toxic, just like her mom, James would say whenever the topic came up, with "It's better for everyone if we keep our distance." He painted a picture of a heartbroken father who had been abandoned by the people he loved most, and while I sympathized with his pain, something about the story never sat right with me. Still, I trusted him. We were planning our future together, and I told myself it wasn't my place to push him to relive old wounds. Whenever I asked gentle questions about La, like whether he hoped to reconcile with her someday, he'd grow tense, frustrated, and change the subject. I assumed he was just deeply hurt and trying to protect himself from further pain. Fast forward to our engagement party, which we hosted at a charming venue in the countryside. It was a beautiful evening, and everything was going perfectly. My parents were there beaming with pride, and James's friends and family were mingling and enjoying themselves. I was on cloud nine, thinking about how lucky I was to have found someone so wonderful. About an hour into the event, while I was chatting with some of my bridesmaids near the buffet, I noticed a young woman walking into the venue. She had long dark hair, piercing eyes, and a quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. At first I thought she was a distant relative of James that I hadn't met yet, but as she moved further into the room I realized something was off. James froze when he saw her. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. Gone was the relaxed, charming man I knew. He looked like he'd seen a ghost before I could even process what was happening. The woman walked straight up to me. Ignoring everyone else in the room, "I'm your fiancé's daughter," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You deserve to know the truth about the man you're about to marry." My heart dry dread. This was James's daughter, the one he described as manipulative and brainwashed. She reached into her bag and handed me an envelope. "Read this," she said quietly, glancing at James with a look of disgust. "It'll explain everything, then you can decide if you still want to marry this guy." Before I could say anything, James was at my side, his face red with anger. What the are you doing here?" he shouted it loud enough to draw the attention of every guest in the room. "Get out now." Lila didn't flinch. "I don't want you to ruin another woman's life like you ruined my mother's. She has the right to know what monster she's marrying." James grabbed her arm and started dragging her toward the door, yelling for security to escorting her out. The room was dead silent. All eyes on the unfolding drama. The guards escorted her out, and as soon as the door closed, James turned to me, his face pale and panicked. "Don't read it," he said, his voice trembling. "She's just trying to ruin this for us. She's been brainwashed by her mother. It's all lies." But his panic only made me more suspicious. My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. The first page was unmistakable: a court document filed, restraining order filed against James' last name. My heart began to race as I started reading the details aloud. The document outlined a completely different version of events than the one James had been telling me. According to the court filings, James had been the one who cheated during his marriage, not just once but multiple times. The document detailed several affairs, including one with a coworker and another with a close family friend. When his ex-wife discovered his infidelity, she filed for divorce, but James didn't take it well. The court records described how he began stalking her after the separation, showing up uninvited to her home, her workplace, and even Lila's school. He sent her emails and made harassing phone calls demanding that she take him back. The situation escalated to the point where his ex-wife had to call the police multiple times. One particularly chilling incident described in the document involved James attempting to break into his ex-wife's house late at night while she and Ella were inside. This was the final straw that led her to file for a restraining order. Even more disturbing was the impact on Lila. The document mentioned that she had witnessed many of James's outbursts and had chosen to live with her mother because she felt unsafe around him. It also stated that James was prohibited from contacting either his ex-wife or Ella until Ella turned 18. As I read, my voice broke and tears streamed down my face. The room was completely silent except for James's frantic attempts to interrupt me. "It's not true," he shouted, his voice desperate. "She's lying. They're all lying." But his protest sounded hollow. When I finished reading, looked up to see the horrified expressions on our friends and family. James's mother, who had been sitting near the front, buried her face in her hands and muttered, "Oh, James, not again." I turned to James, my voice shaking. "Is any of this true?" He couldn't even look me in the eye. Instead, he stammered something about how his ex-wife was vindictive and had set him up because she couldn't handle the divorce, but his excuse didn't make sense. If it was all a lie, why hadn't he told me about the restraining order? Why had he hid so much of his past? "I can't do this," I said, taking off my engagement ring and placing it on the engagement is off. James tried to follow me as I walked out, but several of my friends blocked him, telling him to back off since that night he's been blowing up my phone with texts and calls begging for another chance. He's accused me of him in front of everyone and ruining his reputation. His mother has also reached out saying that while James has made mistakes, he's a good man at heart and deserves forgiveness. Laya, on the other hand, sent me a message on social media apologizing for causing a scene but saying she couldn't stand by and watch her father manipulate another woman the way he manipulated her mother. She said she hoped I'd make the right choice now. I'm left questioning everything. Was I wrong? I did read the document aloud. Overreact by ending the engagement so suddenly? Or did I have every right to protect myself from a man who clearly hasn't changed? So read it. Am I the OP? Didn't him? He humiliated himself by lying to OP and trying to manipulate the narrative. If it weren't for his daughter, who knows when or if OP would have discovered the truth. The fact that he tried to. The document from OP and immediately went into damage control says everything about his guilt. OP dodged a massive bullet here thanks to Lay, who sounds like a great girl because she cares for others, even people she's not close to. And now let's hear the community's opinion, not the a-hole. And as someone who works in family law, let me tell you, court orders like restraining orders aren't handed out lightly. The behavior described in that document is serious stalking, attempted break-ins, and his excuse that his ex set him up. Laughable. Courts require evidence to grant restraining orders, and the fact that it was granted in the first place speaks volumes. The most telling part of this story is that his own daughter felt compelled to intervene. She didn't do this was to hurt you. She did it to warn you. Please don't let anyone convince you to give this man another chance. Oh my God, not the a-hole at all. James has been gaslighting you this entire time. He completely flipped the narrative and painted himself as the victim when he was the villain all along. Honestly, good for Lila, for stepping in. She sounds like she's been through with this man. And the fact that she had the courage to show up at your engagement party just to protect you says everything about her. Character. Doesn't let his family guilt you into taking him back. They're just enabling his toxic behavior. Not only are you not the a-hole, but you're also a freaking hero for handling this the way you did. You could have kept quiet and dealt with it privately, but you chose to read that document aloud and hold him accountable in front of everyone. I can't imagine how that must have been for him, but honestly, he earned every ounce of it. Imagine if you had married him without knowing any of this. You'd be trapped with a man who clearly has no issue lying and manipulating. Good riddance to him, and kudos to Lila for having your back. Stay strong. You've got this. Was about a month ago during quarantine I decided out of sheer boredom to play the European lottery. Believe it or not, for the first time in my life I had won something, and not just a little win, but the whole jackpot was mine. I was literally shaking at first and just wanted to scream and tell everyone, but I decided to just calm down and plan out what I'm going to do with the money I received. Is immense. Like I never have to work a day in my life, neither will my children if I decide to have them, and I still had enough left over to give to my brother and parents, so they, if they act responsibly, will never have to worry about money again. Either on point. The females on my mother's side of the family have all pretty much genetics when it comes to hair. We're all mostly losing hair and have visible bald spots on our heads. Mine started at the age of 15, which was a huge to my self-confidence. It's not horrendous, but it is something that I've always said I'd fix for all of us if I had the chance, and now I intend to keep my word. And said anyone who wants hair implants is welcome to join, and I am paying for everything. It ended up being only me, my mom, and my aunt's mother's sister. As I am arranging all of this, I get a call from my mom. Apparently my cousin's brother's daughter would like to have me pay for her fertility treatment instead of the hair transplant, which was never even considered for because luckily she has really nice hair. I was kind of weirded out by the request, especially since she didn't reach out to me in person. Her mom called my mom, and because she has some issues with me and avoids me at all times, but now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be friendly and pay for her treatments. I flat out refused, mainly because we have a history where she really wasn't nice to me, and she used to pick on me, and partly because, well, it's my money, and I don't want to spend it on someone who wasn't my friend and kind of always hated me a little. Another thing as well, I've not quite looked it up, but I think these treatments are far more expensive than just a hair transplant, and I think she just saw a nice opportunity to milk me a little with the added pressure from our families. So now my mom and aunt are saying I have enough money to pay for her as well, that I'm an a-hole if I don't, because it's such a life-changing thing to be a mom, and if I don't do it, she can never be a mom, and that they'd rather I spend the money I was going to spend on them on my cousin. I'm thinking of just getting some hair for myself and thinking duck them all. But would I be the a-hole then? Not the a-hole. All kinds of people come out when someone suddenly has money. Your cousin wants to play nice now that someone can pay for her treatment, but she won't even contact you or your mom herself. She had her mommy contact your mommy. You do not have to spend your money on people who were not there for you when you had nothing. That's not being greedy, it's being realistic. Your real friends were there 2 months ago before you had the cash. Anyone who pops their head up now is just about the money, and unfortunately anyone new who shows up, you have to be careful about. Are they trying to be your friend because you have money, or are they just a cool person? Not the a-hole. It's your money, so you choose what to use it on. If she has never been nice to you before, the money, it's clear she is now trying to use you for her own benefit. I suggest you keep the money as secret as it is. Possibly more people like her will try to use you. Not the a-hole. Your money, spend it however you want. Also put your foot down now about what you will and won't pay for. When people find out you have money, they'll start to try and take mega advantage of you. People coming out of the woodwork, friends you haven't talked to in years, contacting your family members with all sorts of emergencies. Learn how to say no and learn it quickly. Update. Okay, since a bunch of people are pinging me about the amounts and some about how a baby is the most important thing I can tell you. My parents' brother and aunt is the only one who received money from me. It was because they were always there for me, and I felt loved. With them I got around 80 million euros after tax. Parents, brother, and aunt all received around 5 million individually before tax, which is 25%, so if they want they can ducking pay for her baby. Treatments. Nobody wants to ducking pay for it because they say these things can cost up to hundreds of thousands of euros for a single try and not even work the first time, and everyone wants a big house, vacation home, new car, etc. First, I'm the one with the majority of the money. Still, I was also the worst for not giving everyone in the family an equal share. My mom has 2 sisters and a brother, and I only gave money to one aunt, because if I had given cousin side of the family the same amount of money nobody would be upset, and they'd pay for it themselves with my money. But okay, she and I have had a history where I was really young and thought she was my best friend and I were really loyal to her, but she accused me of trying to steal her boyfriend and made fun of me behind my back whenever I left the room. She told everyone I was still at 16 and her and some guys made fun of me, which now I'm kind of proud I wasn't an S. I cut ties with her around that time because I had felt betrayed so many times up to that point. From then on we've never really gotten along anymore and she has never shown any interest in me. Up until now when I was suddenly rich. Now I should be a good cousin and pay for her to have a baby or maybe a few. Well, after reading all of these responses and having some time to think, I've decided to not go ahead with the procedure for anyone but myself. Everyone just seems so entitled, and I feel like I'm a new toy for everyone to use and abuse until I'm not interesting anymore and have given them all they can get. I'm sad and disappointed, but like they say, money can't buy you happiness, but it hurts less when you cry in your mansion. I don't have a mansion. I'm just trying to be funny. A couple of years ago I married into a large family. My husband has 2 brothers and 6 cousins, boys who all grew up as one family and literally call each other's brothers. We tend to meet up at least once a month. My issue isn't with the boys, it's that 6 of them are married, and there is a weird dynamic within the wives. The main issue is that my husband used to date his cousin's wife's sister before he met me. Weird. I know they broke up 6 years ago, and even though I didn't even know him when he was in the relationship, it's clear she thinks I have something to do with it. She pretty much doesn't acknowledge him, and is very frosty with me with catty comments thrown in. I'll call this sister-in-law Charlotte. Everyone knows she is like this too, but no one makes a big deal of it, including us. I understand that she has a reason for her behavior, even though sometimes I find it frustrating. The guys generally makes light of the situation. Example. There were lots of jokes when I got her for Secret Santa, so it's out in the open that she dislikes me as I'm the newest wife and also feel like I'm in a somewhat hostile situation. I used to get quite anxious when I was around them. I discussed this with a different sister-in-law, let's call her Miranda, last year. I actually ended up breaking down and crying about how hated I felt when I hadn't actually done anything wrong. Miranda was understanding and basically said she knew Charlotte should get over it, and hopefully she would soon. So the most recent thing that happened was that I mentioned to Miranda a group activity we could do with all the wives. It was basically a paid activity, and something you can only really go to once. She said it was a great idea, and I said I'd bring it up next time we were together to arrange a date. A couple of weeks later she messaged the rest of the wives in our WhatsApp group suggesting this activity and asking for dates we are free. Charlotte throws out a date she can do as her schedule is the most packed, and I say I can't do that date, but suggest alternate dates without even responding to me. Miranda says as the majority can go on Charlotte's date, we'll go with that date. So they basically planned and went to the event I told them about without me, bearing in mind everyone else could have gone on several other dates, but that would have meant no Charlotte. I got really upset by this, and my husband basically thinks I'm being unreasonable. I think it's the issue for me. 1, I feel like the least important one of the group anyway. 2, there was no acknowledgement of me when they made their plans or that I came up with the activity. 3, Miranda knows how Charlotte treats me and how she makes me feel. She doesn't care. I've basically told my husband I won't be meeting up with him separately anymore without him and the boys, as I don't feel valued, but he thinks that's a really petty move and will lead to issues in the future. I'm also reluctant to bring this up to the wives, as I don't want to make this into a huge awkward thing. It's already bad enough when we meet up, having to deal with Charlotte. You aren't being petty. And you don't have to be friends with them. It's okay. You have to be civil at holiday functions but don't have to see them. Otherwise, anyone would have her feelings, and your husband is not exactly being supportive of you and your feelings. Your feelings are valid, and you should insulate yourself from future psychological harm. Try to make your own friend group if you don't have one, maybe take up new hobbies and the like. People aren't your friends and clearly don't want to be. I understand that, but you're giving them a lot of power that they don't deserve. No one is obligated to be another person's friend for any reason. Stop trying. You need to sit your husband down and explain to him how important it is that he get on your side. Of course, he is allowed to exercise his own judgment and call you out when you are wrong, but in this case you are not. It was your idea. You weren't given credit for it, and you were cut out. If he doesn't understand how that is, then you've got more than a sister. In-law issues you should talk to Miranda about directly. Tell her exactly what happened, made you feel. She either takes that information and tries to make it up to you, or she proves herself not to be your friend. The last secret I am going to impart: stop worrying about making people upset. If you are making an honorable effort to be reasonable, find compromises and avoid cruelty, then duck the people who get upset. It's on them. The key here is being thoughtful and reasonable, which it sounds like you are. At this point, your goal is not peace because no one cares about your needs. At this point, your goal is boundaries again. Well thought out, reasonable ones. Unfortunately, you have to start with your husband has to have your back. Edit a couple of things to mention. My husband's brother's cousins are his best friends. He has other groups of friends that we see, but there is an obvious difference in the closeness. That's why we meet up with them so much and are all. So, in reality, I actually enjoy hanging out with the guys, and we get on great. I also have good friends, though many have moved out of town, but it's true that I need to make an effort to make sure my life is full outside of this group. I don't want to paint my husband in bad light. I agree that I need to spell this out to him more clearly and provide more context. His response was more that if I act off the back of this and withdraw from the group now, I will feel more isolated and awkward around them and then regret it. I actually think I need some space from these girls so I can feel like myself again, and hopefully he will understand that the way he handles things is a different example. He thinks it's Charlotte's loss that she doesn't speak to us as we are great and she's missing out. Obviously, it affects me more deeply, and I need to communicate that I'm also taking on board the advice of meeting up with my sister-in-law 1 or 2 at a time. I think this would work really well, and to be honest, my main issues are with Charlotte and Miranda, so hopefully I can make some stronger connections so I don't feel as isolated in the group. I'm a classic people pleaser that wants to be unanimously liked. This is not an appealing quality, and it's refreshing to remember that not everyone will like me, and that's okay. My husband is the youngest of 2 boys, and my mother-in-law's favor is older brother, my brother-in-law. To give an example, my husband does her weekly shopping and drops it off as she's vulnerable and shielding due to virus. He's done this every week since March. She has shown little appreciation and expects him to do it twice. My brother-in-law's dropped by with bulk bought tea bags or bottles of water, and she will go on and on to anyone who will listen about how he goes out of his way for her, his kind heart he looks after. There are also many times that my husband and brother-in-law have given her a joint present, and she will hug brother-in-law only and say, "I know my brother-in-law really gave me this." No, she loves my husband, and I think the reason for this is that brother-in-law took on a lot of responsibility when they were young, and my husband was shielded from things. My husband stepped up in the last 10 years or so, and brother-in-law has stepped back due to his own family responsibilities, but my mother-in-law hasn't changed her mindset. So at the weekend we went to drop shopping off at her house and stopped for a chat. We were talking about my pregnancy, and she turned to me and said, "You do know I will never love any grandchild as much as I love brother-in-law's son because he is brother-in-law's child and my first grandchild." I have no idea why she said this to me, and maybe it's common for grandparents to favor their first grandchild, but she knows I'm 20 weeks pregnant, and I already had it in the back of my mind that we would be treated differently. My sister-in-law already gets special treatment for being a mother of this grandchild, and I thought having a baby may change this, but it looks like it will just highlight the favoritism. More, my husband thinks I'm jumping the and getting upset before anything has happened, but I feel so down about this unnecessary interaction and having to deal with this once the baby is born. Mother-in-law, thank you for letting me know that you will never love my child as much as you love my nephew. You do understand that since you have promised to teach my child that they are less than, you have guaranteed yourself a very limited place in their life. If and when you can prove to me that you are capable of keeping your prejudicial favoritism to yourself, we can revisit what, if any, relationship you will have with my family. I would have immediately responded with, "Oh, good. I knew my mom would be the favorite and most loved grandmother. I'm glad you see it too. Thanks for ducking out every future Christmas with number 1 grandma is fantastic," and sits back and watch her out while backpedaling. I 28 female paint broken unsalvageable antique and vintage furniture. My brother 25 ex-fiancé 32 used to bug me about selling him one of my vanities, and I told him I'd give him a $200 discount on the one she wanted. That was 8 months ago, and I never heard anything back, so I started doing it how I wanted it done just recently. I recently finished my own vanity that has always been mine to keep. I had time between custom orders and for sale pieces to finally finish it after owning it for 3 years. I posted the photo and my brother comments for me to let him buy it, and I told him it was mine. Well, she comments under our thread, "I picked out the color scheme. This piece was supposed to be mine, but it doesn't surprise me one bit. One more thing gone of mine, enjoy it." Not only did I point out, "Hey, this isn't your piece," but I also told her I don't know where a thing. She started messaging me back and forth about how I promised her I did not, and that it was her vanity it wasn't, so I sent her the pictures of each to compare, and I told her nothing was hers until it was paid for, and it wasn't. She is no longer with my brother. She treated him like dirt, and was cruel to him, and now won't allow him to see their daughter, so she gets absolutely nothing from me, and I blocked her. A few days later she texts me through what I can only assume is an app and asks if she can still buy it. She didn't once apologize for commenting that disrespectful on my business page. I haven't replied, and I refuse to. Am I the a-hole? She is telling some mutual friends that I stole it from her when that couldn't be further from the truth. I won it at an auction for $25. I'm going to continue to ignore her, and when I am finished with it in the style I want to do, I'm going to sell it. Not the a-hole, But please tell us your brother is pursuing his parental rights through the family court system is not the a-hole. You can't steal what she never owned. I would suggest blocking her and not engaging with her further. You can't argue logic with crazy. Any further interaction won't help the situation.